Good afternoon or good morning, depending on when you're listening to us. This is the Homes WTF podcast. That's Homes Where to Focus. I think this is episode 15? 17. Goodness gracious, we are cruising along. Today we're going to talk about deeds and home ownership, but I want to start with a quick little hot take. I know this will be surprising coming from a realtor, but my hot take is that you actually need a realtor to sell your home. I have some statistics to back this up. Roughly 1 out of every 3 people in the country will attempt to sell their home by owner before they hire a realtor. And only 10% of those people, not 10% of homeowners, but 10% of the people who attempt to sell their house by themselves are successful in that process. Another statistic I'll add to that is that statistically, when you hire an agent to sell your house, they sell for 9% higher than if you sold it by yourself. That means, 1, an agent's going to be more successful in selling your home, and 2, they're going to make you more when they sell their home. I would say that's probably because of the marketing knowledge, know-how, and reach that an agent gives you. But that 9% number easily pays for itself when you hire that agent to help you buy your home. So I know that's a little bit of a maybe a self supporting statement coming from me, but I've got numbers to back it up. That's my hot take for today. Don't try to sell your house by yourself. It'll be easier and you'll make more money if you hire a good agent to sell your house for you. That's my hot take today. But let's move into our topic of conversation because it's something I'm really interested about. And we have a guest speaker here today, our very first guest speaker here on the podcast. You get to hear from somebody other than just Jason, Rhonda, and I today. Our guest today is Tom. He is a real estate attorney with Kanger and Porter in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I will tell you, I have used Tom for 6 or 7 years, and he's the one I call personally when I am doing something, whether it's one of my investment properties or for me personally. It's the person I use personally, which I think is a really telling thing for how I feel about him. He graduated from Wake Forest University and Campbell Law School, and he's been practicing since 1992. Which is a good long law career. So we'll hear a lot from him today. But I want to introduce the idea of the episode today and where it came from. There was a news story in 2024, a couple years ago now, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. The news made it sound like a very sensational story. A nearly $4 million home was almost stolen right out from under the owner just with a piece of paper, is the way the news read. And the house didn't get stolen. There's a lot to unpack there. Fast forward to today, the woman who tried to do this is in jail. The guy still owns his house. But essentially, she went to the Register of Deeds office and filed some paperwork to create a deed for the house just in her name. She did it all by herself on her own. And the news made it sound like she almost got away with actually owning the house outright because of this. And so that being the backdrop for our conversation today and our story, let's jump into it a little bit. And Tom, I'll pass it to you. What can you give us in terms of feedback or thoughts about that story a little bit and what happened there?
Yeah. Well, I get this question at the closing table pretty often where people have seen infomercials and other information, and the way these things get presented is kind of scary that, hey, anybody can steal your title and you better watch out and pay us X amount of dollars for insurance against this. Well, I'll first of all say that in all of my years of practice, and I do a pretty heavy volume of real estate transactions, that I've not once seen or had any of my clients say that they've had this issue. While fraudulent deeds and those kinds of things are possible, it's not quite as easy for somebody to divest you of title to your property. Because really, ultimately, the only person that can transfer ownership of your property is you by signing a valid deed and having that recorded properly. So this thing, and there's kind of two ways to do that. kind of. So one is to for someone to forge your name on a deed. So it looks like I'm the one that actually signed the deed away to my house. Another might be for a stranger to do a deed from themselves to themselves for my house to kind of try to stake claim to that. The first scenario where somebody has actually forged my signature is more problematic because, in North Carolina, attorneys handle real estate transactions. We're the ones that do the title search. And in doing the title search, we go through the chain of deeds to verify that, the person who's selling this house, in fact, acquired good title to the property. So if there's a deed in the chain of title where it appears that the current owner signed it and it was recorded, I'm going to assume that that's a valid deed. That's not going to cause me cause for alarm. If Rhonda is the owner of this property and Nat is the one who is our seller and who says that he owns it, and there's a deed, the last deed in the chain of title is into Rhonda, I'm going to wonder, how did Nat get title to this property? It may be that you acquired it through an estate where somebody died and therefore there's not a most recent deed into your name, but even in that scenario, we're checking the estate records because we need to connect all the dots. If there's a break in the dots, there's a big problem and that person doesn't own the property and they can't sell it. So the situation where somebody else is putting their name on a deed to my house, that's more of a clerical issue than it is we need to file a lawsuit to verify that I still own the title. And it's my understanding that situation in Raleigh, the owner actually did file a lawsuit to quiet title to the property, meaning to have a judge declare that this previous document was invalid. But in my opinion, that probably was not necessary because anybody doing a title search will see that this woman that fraudulently did a deed never had acquired title, and therefore she couldn't have taken ownership that way nor encumbered the property. So, ultimately you can't give what you don't have. So if you never properly acquired title to something, you can't properly convey title to someone else.
You mentioned something in there in passing that I would like to understand a little bit more, is the chain of title, which is the primary thing that you as an attorney do, right, for your real estate clients.
That's a big part of our title search, right? So we go back in the chain of title to make sure that, the person who's now trying to sell this property, in fact, acquired title properly. And we go back further, for at least 30, 40 years to make sure that the deeds previously in the chain of title were correct. So, for example, there was a case where this house had been foreclosed and now the bank was selling it after it had foreclosed. And the previous deed in the chain of title, basically there were like 5 or 6 heirs that had inherited this property from their mother who had passed away. One of those siblings bought out the other siblings, and now she was the sole title holder, and she was the one that was foreclosed, and Wells Fargo or whoever got it. Well, I found it curious that the deed from the 5 siblings to the one that was buying out the others, because it was kind of clear that these were adults that had inherited this property, that only the siblings but none of their spouses signed that deed. Because in North Carolina, even if you hold title to property in your name alone, if you sell it, your spouse has to join in order to convey clear title. Well, as it turns out, all of those people were in fact married. So that our closing then basically collapsed, and Wells Fargo had to file a lawsuit to quiet title because their foreclosure, they did not acquire good title through their foreclosure. So that's why even, you might think, okay, Wells Fargo foreclosed on this property. If there were at least a couple of different lawyers involved in this transaction, their title must be fine. Well, that's not the case. So that's why we go back in the chain of title to make sure that not only the current owner's deed was correct, but there were not errors in previous deeds in the chain of title.
Interesting.
What would happen in a situation like that? So they find it out later, and then what's the recourse for that?
Well, basically, there's a lawsuit that would name the previous owners, the previous siblings as defendants. Or the other answer is to track these people down and do a quick claim deed to Wells Fargo to solve the problem that way. But if that won't happen, or if somebody doesn't willing to play nice, then there would have to be a lawsuit. They're all named as defendants, and ultimately the court declares that this woman, the one sister, paid proper consideration to become the owner, and she's declared to be the owner, et cetera.
So where are the titles? Where are they kept? Where are they stored? Is it just online? Do you have to go to your public records? Can those be manipulated?
So the titles are recorded with the Register of Deeds office. The deed to your property is the title. So unlike a car, if you buy a car and get a loan, the lien of the car loan is marked on the title, and the bank holds onto the title until the loan is paid off. And then the bank sends you the title to the car, and then you sign over the title to whoever you sell it to. With a house, it's a two-part deal. The deed is the title, and after we record it, the owner of the property gets to keep the deed. But when that person sells that property, there's a new deed from the owner to the new buyer. So you don't, unlike a car, you're not signing over the same piece of paper to subsequent owners.
So the title just stays pretty much, Register of Deeds is the one that keeps, that knows what's going on.
The most important thing that it's recorded with the Register of Deeds office and is part of the public record. So even though you were given the original deed to your house after you bought it, you're never going to have to present that document, or if you lose it, it's not the end of the world. The most important thing that it's recorded with the Register of Deeds office. And if legal documents are not recorded with the Register of Deeds office, then they're not enforceable and essentially of no effect until they get recorded.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think that's an important understanding in real estate. And to your point, these commercials or whatever we're talking about, you need to buy our, help to make sure your house doesn't get stolen, is that idea that it does have to be recorded on the public record. I could write up a deed and sign it and give you my house right now, and you can give me some money, and then we leave this building, and you could say, look, I just bought a house from Nat. But if it never gets recorded with the Register of Deeds office officially, you don't own anything, really.
Yeah, or a more common scenario is, let's say I live behind Nat, and my driveway goes over his property, and I've been using that for years, and Nat has given me permission to use that, have an easement over his property to get to mine. Unless there's a recorded easement that gives me that legal right to cross over there, I really don't have a legal right to use that unless I file a lawsuit to try to establish it otherwise.
You hear a lot about that kind of stuff too. Doesn't you have something like that with your back porch stairs or? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have to get kind of permission, I guess, from the people if you do a sale or whatever.
Right.
Or you have to go through all kind of...
Yeah, but if there's not a recorded document to evidence that permission, then it's not enforceable. I couldn't sell my property to say, okay, I'm selling you my house, and you've got permission to use the driveway that goes over Nat's property. Well, that's not an enforceable easement unless there's a document recorded to establish that.
If you want to get real messy with a situation like that, what about situations like adverse possession or easement by necessity, things like that? Have you run into those kind of things?
Yeah. So adverse possession, you don't see it very often. So adverse possession is the claim that says, okay, I have used this property as if it's my own for a significant amount of time, and therefore I'm able to claim it as my own. Sometimes we see that if, somebody's fence is substantially over a neighboring property. But there's certain legal requirements to adverse possession. And the rule is you have to have used that property, hostile to the interests of the actual owner in an open and notorious way, basically that the neighbor recognizes that you've been using it without their permission, because if the use is with permission, then that kills an adverse possession claim every time. But even if those facts exist, you would have to bring a lawsuit to prove that you in fact meet these requirements to have acquired title by adverse possession and have a judge declare that you're now the owner. So that's why we often have this conversation if we're doing a closing and the fence is encroaching over the neighbor's property or something like that. Usually the encroachment's only a few inches or a foot, and nobody's really concerned about that. There was a situation in the Buena Vista neighborhood in between Forest Drive and Reynolds Drive where Will Reynolds was the developer of that neighborhood, that part of the neighborhood in the 20s. And there was a big area behind in this like big block of it was on the map of the neighborhood, it was called Park and Playground. But it was never developed as a park and playground. It was basically just a wooded area behind everybody's houses. And somebody I'm not sure how they figured that out, but somebody started to put a fence back in there, to fence like behind their yard to kind of try to stake a claim, and did a deed from themselves to themselves for that area. That when you do a deed from yourself to yourself, that is a deed trying to establish adverse possession by color of title, which brings the time period from 25 years down to 7 years. So when that started happening, then all the neighbors caught wind of it, and it all kind of blew up. And what wound up happening was, turns out that the Will Reynolds estate or trust was determined to be the current owner. Wells Fargo, the trustee of the Will Reynolds Trust, said, "We don't care. We don't want this property. If you neighbors get together and figure out how you want to divide this up, we'll do deeds to you." And they did, and the deed included the restriction that no improvements be built on that part. So, but that's an example of how that happens.
So you mentioned somebody forging your signature or somebody deeding property to themselves to try to create this
A squatter on the deed.
Yeah, or this situation in Raleigh, and we're talking about the Register of Deeds office. Why does the Register of Deeds accept things like this?
Well, as long as a document is acceptable for their recording requirements, meaning that it's notarized properly, they're not in a position to know whether that's correct or not. And when I was reading up about the situation in Raleigh, I think the owner of that house made the point, like, how does the Register of Deeds office, allow this? Why don't we have greater checks and balances on that? Well, in order to determine that would really require title search. The Register of Deeds employees aren't lawyers or title searchers, and to do that would be, I think, practically impossible with the volume of documents that get recorded in any given Register of Deeds office. There certainly wouldn't be time for an independent title searcher to check every one of those titles. So
I have a question. I don't know if it would go down a different tangent than where you're going on this. If you have a fraudulent deed that was recorded, now I've come in and I've purchased the property and that's out there. Somebody comes and finds it and they're like, whoa, you bought this, but it's not really theirs to sell. Now what happens? Am I going to have to go and I now own this property. I've got to spend my money to hire somebody to clear that, or is that what title insurance does?
Well, that's what the lawyer does.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you hire a lawyer to do a title search for you, it's my job as the lawyer, as your attorney for that transaction, to verify that you're getting good title.
Just curious.
Right, and that's why, again, it's not the Register of Deeds' job to verify that. It's the lawyer that is representing the buyer and doing the title search to verify. And in North Carolina, lawyers handle title real estate transactions mainly because we're the ones that certify the title to the title insurance company. So if there was a problem that I could not find by doing a competent job, that's what title insurance is for. And that's why really we don't need the Register of Deeds office to try to do that, and I think it would be practically impossible for that to happen anyway.
So they're essentially record keepers.
Right, exactly right.
Okay.
And because they're public record keepers, something I say in every closing, Tom has heard me say this a lot of times to my buyer clients, is when you close on a house, when you purchase a house, it is a matter of public record, and you inevitably get lots of communications and mail about the purchase of your house. and some of them are scams. And a very common one that I've had clients fall for in the past is an extremely official looking letter that says, hey, you just bought your house, you need a certified copy of your deed, and we'll obtain one for you, we just need this check for $120 and blah 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 blah. And it looks incredibly official. But the problem is your closing attorney, first off, will send you a copy of your deed as soon as it's done. And it's also a matter of public record. You can look up your deed online. I can look up your deed online. So I always just end that conversation with my clients by saying, if you ever get something about your house that is a question, call the real estate agent that helped you do the purchase. Call the attorney that helped you do the closing. That was your attorney. If you never thought you hired an attorney to represent you before, you did when you bought a house.
Sure.
You hired an attorney to represent you. So you've got people who know and can answer for you very quickly if something is legitimate or not. And I would argue most of what you receive right after you complete that transaction is illegitimate.
And even though I've not had any fraudulent transactions come through my office or my clients call me saying that they were a victim of anything like that, I did have a client who's also a friend actually say that they were getting mail with somebody else's name on it, which was unusual. They'd owned this house for some time. So that caused them concern. So we did a title search and we didn't find anything that was recorded. And when we're talking about fraudulent deeds, and it's not likely to happen with your own house, because somebody, if they try to steal title to your house, they really can't do anything with it without, to get you out, they would have to evict you. An eviction is a legal proceeding that necessarily involves the sheriff's office. So they would be calling attention to their crime if they tried to steal the title to your house. So that's why you just don't see that happening.
Not saying that vacant land is easy target.
Well, right. So vacant land where you're not paying attention, that's a different story,
Right.
I think. But I'll also point out that the Register of Deeds office, I think not all counties offer it. I know Forsyth County does. They have a fraud alert registration where you can go to their website and register your name and provide your email and phone number. And if a document is recorded with your name on it, they give you notice of that. So, that's excellent protection in my opinion.
And all Register of Deeds offices are per county. So if you're listening to this and you want to know if your Register of Deeds office has that fraud prevention, or if you just want to know where your deed is recorded, you look up the county that you live in. So whatever county Register of Deeds office or Register of Deeds your
Clerk
county.
of court, official
if you
records.
type that
Yep.
in, you'll find it. It's all public record.
Yep.
So it sounds like it's kind of a hard thing to be able to do, right? So what is in it for the scammers, and why is so much of it out there? What can they possibly be trying to get? See what I'm saying? Because you hear about it. I hear about it all the time. I see it online. I see it
Is
on
the
social
risk
media.
worth the reward?
Well, what are they doing though? What are they? What are they going to get from that customer? Is there something that somebody say I could? They send me something. I could actually sign something unbeknownst. That's what it is, and it. There's got to be something in for them where they wouldn't be doing it, right?
Right. Well, number one, I don't think there's actually a lot of it out there. I think there are people trying to sell
More
a product
stories.
to saying, pay me X amount of dollars, so I'll protect your title.
Right.
Again, in all my years of doing this, at a pretty good volume, I haven't ever seen it before. So I don't think it's out there a lot. But you might have let's say I have vacant land, somebody is impersonating me as the seller, and they try to sell my land claiming that they're the owner. Well, if they get a check for the proceeds and they take off, and it's kind of like, it's like wire fraud or other, theft then they're gone. So
the
it's not
scammers
a
are the
long
people
time
trying
kind
to
of
sell you the insurance. Pretty much.
Well, so let's call that our wrap-up question for this episode. We'll go around the room and we'll give Tom the last word.
Yeah.
But based on the discussion we've had today, and you talk about seeing these commercials all the time and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Rhonda, starting with you, what do you think is after our conversation today, what do you think is the risk, and would you buy that insurance to protect yourself? Not title insurance, you get that from closing, that's legitimate, but this fraud protection insurance for your home.
No, there's too much public record out there to be spending money on something like that. So I think that educating yourself more in what's available online and public information is probably in your best interest. So I don't see that it's something, I don't understand why somebody would do that, but I don't understand why we get spam calls either. So
What about you, Jason? What do you think?
I agree with Rhonda. I think that it is nice. You mentioned something about maybe not every register of deeds has it, but they have their own little fraud prevention thing that sends you kind of alerts. I think that's pretty cool. So maybe, and that's something that's free, right? It's not
Hey, Jason.
It is absolutely free, and it takes all of about 3 minutes
Yeah,
to do
see,
it.
perfect. So
Your car's warranty is going to expire in 3 days.
I need you to go ahead and do something for me on that. Do I need to pay you some money right now?
Right now.
Yeah, and so I agree. I don't think there is a significant risk to just somebody being able to fraudulently steal your house out from under you. In fact, I would say that risk is completely minimal. But I'm glad you talked about the fraud service that we can sign up for with the Register of Deeds office to get notified if somebody tries to file something in your name, because that certainly could happen. And the sooner you find out about it, the sooner you can do something to prevent it. So
Unless your name is Smith. Rhonda Smith. Always fun.
too common.
Title searchers don't care for that name very much.
No.
Right.
No offense.
It's all good.
Tom, any final thoughts?
Well, I think I agree with you all too that if you just are, vigilant, pay attention. If you're getting mail all of a sudden with somebody else's name on it, that might warrant calling your friendly real estate lawyer and saying, "Hey, would you just double check this?" Or looking up the Registry of Deeds records yourself. Doing things like registering with the Registry of Deeds office, but there's a lot of fear mongering out there, and I think we can protect ourselves mostly without the need for that.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thanks for being here today. If you're listening to this and you live anywhere near Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Tom Kanger is a wealth of information on real estate law. You do estates, wills,
State administration.
okay, all kinds of stuff. So
Won't sue anybody for you, though.
well, that's all right. Our society's already too litigious.
Indeed.
Let's get one less lawyer out there suing people. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for talking to us
Very
about
much.
this and helping us educate our audience a little bit. And I think that'll be it for today. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, we're going to be doing trends, like trends in remodeling. What's popular? What's standard? What is not standard? What's maybe something that's just fly by night? But that's what we're going to be talking about, some trends in remodeling.
Trends in remodeling. So tune in next week to hear about trends in remodeling. And we'll talk to you then. Good chat, everybody.
Good chat.
Thank you.
Good chat.
You have been listening to Homes WTF Podcast. Homes WTF Podcast is produced by Tim Beeman for Such and Such Media. The views and opinions stated on this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our hosting or distribution companies. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be used without express written consent of Such and Such Media.